So what are the traditional and dominant strategies to study consciousness? That's the next question. Why do some people think that studying consciousness is very hard? You might have heard this kind of statement in the other areas of the philosophy or general media. So why do they think that it's very difficult, or sometimes consciousness is impossible to study? That's a question. So here's the one of the dominant kind of paradigm over the last 30 years of the consciousness research, which is to try to find the neural correlates of consciousness, and for short, the NCC, identification of the NCC. Here, the paradigm starts from this outside world. Let's say, there is a dog and also a human walking around. And then this particular person is paying attention to dog. And then inside the brain, there are some parts of the brain that you find some kind of presumably some kind of an NCC of a dog that corresponds to this person experiencing, attending, this vivid experience of the dog. And then here, the question is, what is the physical the events that is happening within this physical world, which is presumably electrochemical reactions inside the brain that corresponds to or coincide with the subjectivity or conscious experience. So this finding of the correlation, okay, between the outside world and also mental is the NCC paradigm, basically. And this kind of approach can be likened or explained as a metaphor to get to the sort of the bottom of the mechanism of consciousness. Let's say if there is this holy grail of the mechanism of consciousness, or the link between brain and or material and mind here at the top of the mountain. And then researchers are studying this neural correlates of consciousness, whether that's located in some particular parts of the brain, such as V1, you don't need to understand, or frontal part of the brain that is sometimes called the executive part of the brain. And then trying to find out where exactly the brain corresponds to which type of the consciousness, mapping the NCC. And then towards that goal, maybe we need to understand a psychological process of attention and its relation to consciousness and so on. And by doing this, gradually bottom up, continuing to proceed through the standard scientific methods, the hypothesis is that we can explain observable behaviors from the neural activities, such as the correlation or reported percept with brain activity, and then build one by one this kind of mapping. And then eventually trying to find a correlational evidence between consciousness and neural activities. That's a approach. However, and this is based on this excitement of explosion of the empirical studies of consciousness in 90s. But around 95 or 94, philosopher David Chalmers posed this question of a hard problem of consciousness. And what it is, what is the hard problem of consciousness? He basically says that even if you find such an clusters of the neurons, that definitely correlates with every time when you see dogs or imagine or think about, there's some kind of particular neurons that becomes active. It doesn't just explain why this has to be related to conscious experience. So that's the question. And this, according to Chalmers, this is a really qualitatively very different kind of the questions than other types of the question that neuroscience can deal with. And that's why he used this capital letter H to call hard problem of consciousness. And in terms of this previous metaphor of this mountain climbing, it's almost like claiming that, okay, so you can do whatever you do, scientists, for 200 years or 1,000 years, trying to claim climb up this mountain, one by one, posing some kind of questions and dealing with that. But there is this almost like a barrier around here in the mountain that, prevents you to get to the top of the mountain, because it's qualitatively, it's just impossible logically that we can get to the top of the mountain. That's what he says. And his argument, roughly speaking, is based on the thought experiment. I don't go to the details, but the argument involves a philosophical zombie or inverted qualia or knowledge argument and so on. And basically, in short, he says that as long as we can imagine the physical world that is composed of every atom and every behavior that is completely the same as we know. Okay, so you can imagine the world or imagine the person that is exact copy of you from the level of the atoms, molecules, and then behaviors. Whatever you say, that this imaginative zombie also will say as well, exactly. But according to the laws of the physics that we know right now, there's nothing that can explain why this real me can experience consciousness, but this one supposedly doesn't have any kind of conscious experience inside it. As long as we cannot exclude this possibility, then he says that this type of the standard method of the consciousness the research in science won't get to the hard problem. But it's not the kind of the argument that is perfect and then everybody, including philosopher, agrees with. So I don't want to go into the detail of this type of the argument, but if you're interested, reading Chalmers' book is one thing, and also counter argument. For example, Galen Strawson argument. He thinks that hard problem is only damaging the study of the consciousness and not really doing much positive. So it's quite interesting to read his things. Okay, but anyway, according to this type of argument, maybe it's impossible to just get to the top of the mountain. Nobody knows at the moment. Okay, so that's the traditional approach of consciousness and hard problem of consciousness.